Hi, everybody. Thank you for subscribing. And if you just happen to be scrolling around and found me that way, I hope you'll help me out and hit that subscribe button. So, a lot going on, obviously, in politics in New York City. And our friend Larry Sabato, who's the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, he tweets, "I'd argue that the nominations of Spamberger in Virginia and Sherrill of New Jersey for governor are far more indicative of the future direction of the Democratic Party than Mamdani's win in New York City." I tend to agree with that. What is possible in New York City with a candidate like this might not be possible in other places. It's a good thing. It gives you a snapshot of what you can do in some big metropolitan areas. Um, but that also may have something to do with the fact that his last name isn't Cuomo. So this is a good thing, and it's very good for progressives, and it's good for certain groups of people that need to be represented a little bit better. And he's young, so it's interesting, and it is a positive thing. But I think I agree with Larry Sabato, that if we say, well, this is now the future of the Democratic Party, we might be over egging our pudding, and that would cause us to then be dismissive of other factors that might be more indicative of the future of the Democratic Party. And then when you start with that wrong set of data, then your entire strategy is messed up and fails. So let's, cool our jets, look at the landscape, and try and keep an accurate picture of things. Again, New York City is not like the rest of the country. It could be. It could be. It's possible that this is the future of the Democratic Party, but way far down the road. I don't think it's something that we should look at as, well, this is what we need to be doing in 2026 and 2028. So that said, you saw how quickly the Republican Party changed under Trump. But even still, it took him a decade to bring us to full dictatorship and fascism, didn't it? Some of us were early victims of his. But in terms of the 2026 midterms, what we need to look at, of course, New Jersey and Virginia are the off-year elections, and they sometimes can be sort of the weather vane for what's about to happen. But we have other factors that are weighing in bigly. First of all, Trump, Elon Musk, Putin, they will try to cheat in the midterms. And as we've discussed before, it's a little bit harder because the manner in which they were cheating before relied on electronic voting. And we know that with the pandemic in 2020, what Putin did in 2016 for Trump didn't work because of the mail-in votes. And that's why they had to bring in Elon Musk to help. So we have to stay one step ahead of them. I don't have the answers on how, but I think the midterms are very, very much in jeopardy. But again, it's harder to cheat when you're dealing with 435 individual congressional House seats, a little bit easier when you're dealing with Senate seats, and there's 33 up. So that's quite a lot. So they have to come up with different ways. And as we've discussed before, they have different ways. They're installing MAGA cheaters, loyalists in key positions locally around the country so that they can cheat. But again, the biggest threat is that Trump is going to try and invent an excuse not to hold the elections at all through martial law and other tactics. Some things that we can keep in mind that we can do. Give only to groups that you know are legit. Otherwise, give directly to the candidates. Okay? Give to groups that have been checked out. Super PACs, that can put great videos on Twitter, but if you haven't checked out how much they're actually spending to air those ads on TV to reach persuadable voters, or online to reach persuadable voters, really targeting those people in the margins, that they say often close elections are won or lost in the margins, all you're doing is making some guys rich because they're entertaining you. The other thing is, if you're going to be doing national ads of any kind, or even targeted ads, those ads must be focus grouped. Otherwise, it's just like-minded people putting together something they think is going to get you enraged so that you'll write a big check to them and they pocket half of it because Citizens United allows that. Okay? So, also, if you see a video online on Twitter, no one's paid to put it there, they're just showing it to you, and it's a minute and a half long or 2 minutes long, that's not a TV ad. Okay? You know this. A television ad is 30 seconds or a minute, or a couple seconds shy of that, I guess. So know what you're looking at, know what you're funding. And chances are, if it's an ad that gets you all angry and upset about an issue that you care about deeply, you're not somebody who needs to be won over. Okay? We don't need to change hearts and minds with people like you. Me. You've got me. So it's important that you be very cognizant of that. If it's something that you agree with, it might not be an effective video. It might be effective in terms of getting you to give these guys money so that they get rich, but it's not going to do anything to move the needle. It is simply sucking resources from the overall effort to elect Democrats and defeat MAGA to make you feel better because you're entertained and make some guys rich because they're so clever, and they got big social media followings or whatever. We've been fooled like that before. I think it cost Democrats the 2022 midterms because a lot of this money in 2020 that people gave, good, well-meaning people gave to try and defeat MAGA and elect Democrats, instead made these guys rich. 2020 was a year when Democrats were supposed to gain House seats to help cushion against the expected 2022 midterm losses, to cushion against losing the House completely. So you want to pad your majority in 2020 when Biden-Harris won. Yeah, that's what was supposed to happen and should have happened. Pad the Democratic majority so that 2 years later, the traditional expected midterm losses would occur, but not enough to lose them in the House. Instead, in 2020, Democrats lost, I think, a net 10 House seats. That was not supposed to happen, which meant in 2022, they lost the entire House. And that's why we are in the situation we're in, folks. That is the truth. So don't give your money to be entertained or make you feel better. Give money to people who are actually spending it to elect Democrats and defeat MAGA. Now, some things to look for. When you see information or maybe an article or something, or they post them on Twitter, the legit groups are going to tell you how much they raised, how much they spent on the buy, on the actual ad buy. They're going to say we're targeting this state for this to target this incumbent Republican senator and help this Democrat candidate or whatever. We are spending this much money on the buy, on the TV buy, this much on radio, the buy, and also digital. The reason the buy instead of the overall cost of it means that when people say, well, we spent this much on the ad, well, where is it airing? And how much is the buy? Because what they're doing is they're padding their so-called production costs. When they say, well, we spent this much on production and buy. No. The production cost means, okay, for every $10 you took in, you guys pocketed $8. Or you gave money to some of your consultant buddies. There's a consulting kickback culture in politics on both sides, where this person who's kind of in charge of the overall money, they bring it in, and then they're going to kind of launder it through their company so that you never know where it really goes. And they're going to give a portion of it to this friend of theirs, a percentage of the buy, which if you're one of the buyers, you're supposed to get up to 15%. Most will cut it 8 or 10%. And then they're going to do production. Well, this is mostly desktop production. These guys are not going out with cameras and actors and all that and with a crew. So it's real cheap production. And they'll invent and pad all these different production costs. And then they put that into the whole, well, this is what we spent on this, this project, this ad. No, they didn't. Let's say they raised $1 million. And they say, well, that's what it cost to do this. No, the actual production of the piece would have been very, very cheap, a minute fraction of that $1 million. And then you want to know, did they spend $1 million to air this every way? No. Maybe they spent 100,000 to air it. And then the rest of it gets siphoned off. Oh, well, this week, and then you see all the list of all these people that made all this money doing things that sound like part of production, but it's not. That's how the game is played. They inflate the price of certain things. They invent costs that don't really exist. But for these videos that you see on Twitter, again, 30 seconds in a minute for TV. Everything else is just stuff like, well, are you putting on Facebook? How much are you spending on the buy? Are you putting it on Twitter as a paid ad? Are you putting it, the buy? Because the production is really, really cheap. And there shouldn't be a list of 17 other companies and things that do this, And some of these guys, actually, for their super PAC, pay somebody and pay a PR firm to promote them, to get them on TV, to make them pundits. Yeah, that's where your money is going. So a lot of it is a lot of BS. It is called the consultant kickback culture, as I said. And then if they're using it to build their own companies, media companies, they're using your money instead of private investors or saving or investing their own. So it's really important to become kind of savvy in this stuff, so that not only so that you don't waste your money, but so that we can elect Democrats for real instead of pretending we're electing Democrats while certain people just get rich. I think it's really important to do that. So look at the expenditures. And if you want to get an idea how some of these groups are spending their money, you can easily see it, open secrets and the filings that they do. And you can see that a lot of it sounds like BS. It really can be done rather cleanly. And I know this because I've done it. I've done it. I've done it for years, and I know what this is. So polling might be legitimate. Focus grouping is more legitimate. So you might see some expenditures where, they're doing this. It also means that you can't really do this when you're doing, 15 videos a week. To do it for real, it's one really great ad. And maybe a longer version can go online, on social media. But you got a TV ad. Maybe you have it also for radio. But start looking for this stuff. And focus grouping, real focus grouping, where they do the ad. What they'll do is kind of a mock-up. Well, actually, since this is just cheap desktop publishing, it doesn't matter. They can do the full ad. And they get together a group of people that are chosen carefully to represent the people they're trying to reach. They show them this video and they get their reactions. And they do like the dial thing. There's all kinds of things you do. That's how you know if what you are producing, before you spend all this other money to air it, if you actually intend to air it, you want to know that it's something that's going to work. You don't just want a bunch of guys in a room going, oh, this is really exciting. People are going to love this because it's hard hitting. Yeah, no. And sometimes hard negative doesn't work with persuadable voters. It might when you get them to a certain point, but just right off the bat, no, they're going to become defensive. Right when you think that they might be considering that some of the stuff Donald Trump is doing is like, hey, I don't really like this. You start hitting them with something too hard, they're going to retreat back into MAGA. Also, clever ads can work, but sometimes something that seems very boring and milquetoast, but it's using the right language, it's got the right tone, it's got the right spokesmodel, if you will, to reach these people in those margins. Close elections are won or lost in those margins. We already know where all of us are. We already know where 90% of the people are going to land. It's the others that we need to reach. So these things matter. These things matter. So sometimes maybe you're a very anti-Trump person. You want something that's hard hitting and, and you see that somebody's produced something that seems pretty simple and kind of soft. Well, it might be something that's real because they might have actually done the work. They might have done the focus grouping and found out that if we hit too hard on this issue, we're going to lose them. But we can bring them slowly here. And some of those MAGA, maybe it's an issue like immigration and deportation. Maybe they believed Trump and supported Trump when he said, we're going to go after those gang members and the criminals. And they might have said, okay. But they might be feeling not so okay when they see these ICE agents, or are they really ICE agents? acting as terrorists, slamming people to the ground, taking children away from the parents, finding people that work, people who are trying to do the right thing and going to their, to their hearings. These aren't criminals. Okay. So you might have to reach that crowd a little bit differently and speak to them. So be willing to give money to a legit group that is doing the right work on this, doing the background work the way it's supposed to be done. They might not excite you, but if they have a track record, if you can look at how they're spending the money and it's legit, again, they will say what they're airing, how much they're spending on the buy, not just production. Be very, very careful with the language on that one. Because a lot of these political reporters who should know better aren't asking. They're taking the press release, or they're told, oh, we spent this much money on this ad. Well, what does that mean? 800,000 on production, which means it mostly goes in the pockets of you and your friends. So that then they will when they get business, do the same thing. See, that's the consulting kickback culture. Or is it the whole thing going for the buy? Yeah. So the kickback culture with political consultants and vendors, it works like that. You get your client, you say, well, we need $1 million to this project. And then you farm this money out to your friends. You give them, you farm out part of the business to them as subcontractors, where they get a huge sum of money, but it only costs them a very little bit to do it. And that means when they get a client, they do the same thing and they kick it back to you. Yeah. And that consultant kickback culture leaves out a whole lot of legitimate political consultants who don't operate like that. And maybe they aren't big national names, but there are, hundreds of people out there, thousands of political consultants that are doing good work in their states who are legit, who aren't getting those types of benefits. I would also urge Ken Martin and DNC leaders to also be careful of that. When you have these powwows only of big name people and it sounds like they did this recently, and what they came up with was an idea, well, we're going to raise all this money and then we're going to spend it this way. We need all the money from our big donors so we can do X. Well, I would be wary of that. If I were Ken Martin, I'd want to bring these people in and say, what is it going to take to win? Not money. What is your plan? What is a strategy? And you start putting that together first by research, which is polling, focus grouping, other data, show how technology has changed, what's worked in the past, trends. Everything starts with the research and data. Tell me what we need to do to win. Do we need to reach this many people, focus on this demographic? All right. Then you tell me, what are the tactics that we can take to implement this? What are the tactics that we need to do to reach these people the way we need to reach them, to do what it's going to take to win? Mail, radio, whatever, tactics, big earned media, big protests, whatever. What are the tactics? Then you say, okay, how much is it going to cost to implement these tactics? And then you stick in your fundraising into that calendar so that you know how much money you're going to need and when you're going to need it. Your fundraising comes there then. Then you do your fundraising, your budget. After you have your budget, you do your fundraising. And it sounds to me that you just got a bunch of people who are used to making the big money in the way that I previously described. You put them in the room and well, we need $10 million and then we can run a bunch of ads and that'll be it. You know what? This goes for if you're a congressional candidate too, or a presidential candidate, especially if you're somebody who can self-fund. If you have a consultant that comes to you, and I don't care if they're a big name person with, 1 million or 2, Twitter followers and somebody that you see, on MSNBC or CNN or whatever, because some of that can be BS. If the first thing they start talking about to you is, well, first I need $1 million, and then I'll tell you how to spend it, send them on their way. Because somebody who really is a consultant doesn't just seek out rich people and tells them how to spend their money. Anybody can do that. And you can still lose. Anybody can do that. Give me $1 million, I'll tell you how to spend it. You want them to start from the beginning and say, here's what we'll do. And then here's about what we'll need. But as we know, and I've said before, as of 2019, which is the last numbers that I saw, the average cost of a successful House campaign, congressional campaign, is $2 million. So know that. And know that if you have a good political consultant, good strategist, they don't start out needing $2 million up front. They can devise a campaign strategy based on these principles that I've just laid out, starting with research and data and how to put together a message and a strategy. That is how you attract the money. You will attract the money when you have something to go to funders and say, this is what we've done. Look at this earned media. Look what we've done. Look at our poll. After you've done earned media and you've done a few things, then you do polling to see if it's working. That's the good news. Then you take it to the people who will then write you big checks. All of this are all the gears working together. But somebody coming to you and saying, well, first I need $2 million. Do not, like I said, send them on their way, because that's not how you do this. And I am concerned about this with the midterms looming, because I know that there are people out there that are considered the big name consultants who really don't know how to do this unless you show up with $2 million. And if you've got $2 million to spend, go get yourself a real strategist, because they can help you, raise the money so that you don't have to spend all of your own money. It's nice to have a good start. It's nice to have seed money. Okay. But if the only thing someone knows how to do is tell you how to spend $2 million or whatever, however much you have, they're not a political strategist, because frankly, anybody off the street can do that. Anyway, I hope this was helpful.